Good afternoon, everybody. I hope everyone's enjoying this cool and rainy day. Hi, Robin Glenn's been sitting there in the background. All right, we're just getting everybody admitted real quick. You'll find the link to the running agenda in the chat. And if you would, please just let us know who all has joined us today in the chat, just who you are and who you're with. That way we have kind of an idea as we're looking back and who's joined us to. We're just saying we have a smaller crowd today, but it's growing. We've got quite a few jumping on. But it is definitely May, and we know everyone's just done and ready for summer to begin.
Hi, Melissa. This is Jan.
Hi, Jan.
Sorry. This is Jan Jackson and McAllister.
Well, glad you're able
Hi.
to join
Good
us.
to see you.
So,
Thank you.
All right. Let me put that. Sorry, we just wanted I wanted to get everybody in that was waiting here as we got started. So no one felt like they were missing out. So that running agenda link is there again. So I see most of you are on it or are familiar with that. So just a reminder that this is that running agenda we have had since last August. So there's a lot of links in here for those of you that may not have been with us as much or just now joining us, but we have all of the links that we've talked about, a lot of resources we've talked about throughout the year, all linked in here too, just for your convenience. So it's just one document that you don't have to keep looking for different things. So my name is Melissa Algrim. For those of you that don't know me, I'm the Director for Reading Sufficiency, and I'm joined by three of my colleagues today. Brenda Beamer Chapman, who is our Director of Social Studies and Financial Literacy and does quite a lot of helping out with our annual reading plans, which we'll be talking about. Deb Wade, who is our Elementary ELA Director and knows all things with Oklahoma academic standards and frameworks and is a wealth of knowledge when it comes to writing instruction. And Lauren Jinks Jones, our early childhood director, which is everything birth through age 8. And we all kind of work together quite often to problem solve different things, come up with resources, answer questions, those types of things. So usually the four of us can help you out with something when it deals with that early literacy. It's always nice to know that you have more than one face to try to holler at to get answers. So, so today, let's talk reports. So it is spring reporting season for RSA, which is always a joyful time, just like Christmas. So I see a few of you have your cameras on. Thank you for laughing with me, trying to be a little silly on this gloomy day. So let me share my screen for those of you that are not able to access this Google Drive real quick. That way you can see what we're looking at. So the end of year report for RSA, and I've talked to a lot of people here lately who are new to RSA, still trying to figure this out. So remember that the end of year report is open right now, and it just is giving raw numbers of how our students did over the course of this year. I've had a lot of calls with of panic, of saying our numbers look really different this year. It's okay. We know that's going to happen. No one is saying the RSA police do not exist. No one is going to show up on your door and said, your numbers are wrong or your numbers are too high or too low. We get it. Okay. But we are still trying to follow the expectations of our legislature, just as you are in your schools as well, and making sure that we are gathering that data the best that we can. So remember that this report is due May 31st, and it is found on single sign-on under the RSA survey. So I'm going to show you just a little bit. Brenda, just give me a thumbs up. Is my screen now showing the single sign-on? Okay, perfect. Thank you. So when you sign in a single sign-on, and I'm in a test mode right now, so you'll see numbers in here that basically I've just made up so that I'm not putting out anybody's information on, here for anybody to see. But when you're coming in to find the end of year report, you are looking for this Reading Sufficiency Act survey right here. And I have a lot of people trying to find the words end of year. It's not on here. It's the survey. So you're going to click on this. And let's hope my internet's working. Wonderful. And so when this comes up, you'll see some tabs up here at the top. There'll be a welcome tab, obviously, where you begin. And then you'll see a beginning of year tab and an end of year report. Okay, so the end of year report is what you want. Okay, if you are in a district with multiple sites, you'll select the site that you want from that drop down and go to the end of year report. Okay. You're going to enter in your contact name. So I'm just going to put in my contact name in here, your phone number, or whoever it is that you want us to contact if we have a question about it, and that email that we can get a hold of them if we need to. Okay. Oops, I hit something wrong. And when you hit something wrong, it doesn't like it. There we go. Let me try that again. And just like you, sometimes we have fun things that happen. I'm just obviously making up some information right here to put on there. Now, remember that you're going to put in your assessment that you've used. If you use, this should be the same assessment that you reported on your beginning of your report. If you use the same assessment for all grades K through 3, you can click this box and only have to select one. If you're in a school, let's say that you only have grades K and 1 at your school and 2 and 3 is at a different site, okay, what you need to do is select what is it that you use for your 2 grades that you serve. And for the site, the grades that are not at your school, you would put no assessment required. That does not mean that we're not assessing those 2nd and 3rd grade students. It means that the other school is reporting on that, okay? And a lot of times that's adjusted from OMES if they've kept up with those header files from accreditation. But just in case that hasn't, that's what that would look like. I'm going to go ahead and just change this. I'm going to be at a school that had K through 3 that uses Acadians in kindergarten and 1st grade and STAR in 2nd grade and 3rd grade. Okay. So what you'll notice down here is that you'll already see some preloaded numbers from the beginning of year report. I did have this conversation yesterday of looking at the BOY. There was some confusion. This is not boys and girls. BOY does stand for beginning of year. MOY often is middle of year, and EOY is end of year. Makes sense when you're used to working with this, but when you're not used to working with this, that does seem very confusing. So it's one of those, and I've noticed on here there is no explanation for BOY. It just says BOY. So we'll be sure to try to fix that for next year. So if you are confused by that, I do apologize, and we'll get that fixed. So with this site, they reported that they had 26 students that were considered at risk at the beginning of the year. So for entered program, this would be our students who have come into the building or are now considered at risk that were not originally reported at the beginning of the year. So this could be, I had a student moved in November who was at, we screened them in when they came in and they were really at risk. And so we added them onto our list, or the other school had already identified that there was a reading plan for them. It could be that I had a student that was showing up just fine at the beginning of the year, but we tested in January for the middle of the year and they really dropped. They were struggling a lot. And so we needed to add them onto a plan at mid-year. So either scenario, those would be our students who have entered a program. For students who maybe enrolled in our school mid-year, but were not having any reading difficulties, we've screened them, everything was fine. They are not on this report at all, so we don't need to worry about that. So let's say I had 5 students that entered into the school or needed a new plan after the beginning of year numbers had been turned in. So I'm going to put a 5 there for kindergarten. And then for exited program, these would be my students who left the school, who moved away. and are no longer there where I can provide them any services. So let's say I had 3 kindergartners that moved away from my building and they've exited that program. And then at the end of the year, how many kindergarten students do I have that have completed their reading program and are now considered to be reading on grade level? Okay, so let's say we've had a really successful program and I have 18 students who are now considered to be reading on grade level. Okay, so I'm going to, would do that with all of my grades, just like that. I'm going to save. Notice that this number here doesn't change. It will auto calculate. Okay, but usually it's when I get out of the program, maybe I come back over here to the beginning, save it again, and it's just, oh, because it wants me to re-enter all my contact information. It's just not because I'm in this test mode. Once I have this stuff, notice that I've got this red print up here that says I was naughty and I need to do something. Once I have this stuff and I say this column will change and will auto calculate. So you'll see by this time, these are my students who are still considered at risk that I need to be, keep an eye on for in the fall, and probably want to start with them right away, if especially fit them in summer school programs if we're offering those. Okay. We've had like some questions coming up with this report, as far as we had a student that just joined us like 2 weeks ago. What do we do? They're just not going to show up on this report, or those students that just showed up a couple of weeks ago, because what we're doing on this report is showing how did our program work over the course of the year. Okay, so we know that for that student, it's not that they've really entered anything. I mean, unless they came with a full plan that you were able to implement and start working on things and added that over, that's fine, but you can add them on entered program. But when we're looking at like just a couple of weeks ago, that's really hard to kind of put in and say, yeah, we've been able to do something with them. So don't stress on that. It's okay. We know we have some of that movement there at the very end. But if they came in, let's say February, March, and they were showing up as at risk, even if a lot of times it's a great idea to use those screeners, even if they missed that middle of year window, to go ahead and give them a quick screening assessment. That's the purpose of those screening assessments, is to get an idea very quickly of how that student is doing and what I might need to do with them. And if I need to give them some intervention, even if it's just for a couple of months, to see if we can get them where they need to be. We don't want to just have them lose that entire year of instruction. Let me stop there for just a second. With the end of year report, do we have any questions that are coming up in the chat? No? Wonderful. Do also remember we have a video tutorial. We've attached it to this. It's about 6 minutes long. You can also find it over here on our welcome. Maybe we can find it. There it is. Right there at the top of the end of the year report, you'll see a link to that same video tutorial, just a quick 6-minute video that just we've walked through that and tried to hit some possible scenarios. I just know that right now it is the season for all of the very odd and strange situations to come out of the woodwork, and sometimes we just have to reason through those together. So don't be hesitant to give us a call if that's something that you're needing some help with. All right, so as we keep on going with reports, also it is time to start thinking about that annual district reading plan. Our favorite time of the year up here at OSDE, because we get to read so many wonderful plans about what our schools are doing to try to help their students be successful readers and writers from the very get-go. It is now available on single sign-on. I can come back over here. I can go back to my single sign-on and you'll see the Reading Sufficiency Act Annual District Reading Plan right there. Okay. And let's see if it's going to think through there. And my screen looks a little different than yours because I have a lot of things I can see. Just so you have an idea though, what we look at when we're getting started with this is we can come in here and see all of our districts, all 509 of them. And if they have started or not, we have several that have started with the draft of their plan, which is wonderful and lovely. And we even have some that might be, no, we don't have any that are district certified yet. That's okay too. So when we come into these, what we're looking for are some plans that will, let's see, when I open this up and it says not started, this is giving me a district view. So looking at just really the district plan. So you'll see starting off with the district planning timeline, reading sufficiency funds. If you are a superintendent or a district user, you will see this page first, okay? If you are a school principal or a site user, school user, you'll see that on there when you come in. You won't see this page. What you will see is your site plan. And when we get this currently has no data, this is what we see at SDE that says you have not yet started or opened your plan. Okay, so when we send you a message that says, hey, it looks like you haven't started your plan yet, it's because we see this screen. You can open it up and go, yeah, I've got all this stuff in here. But if you haven't opened those up to where we can see them yet, that's why we sometimes are saying we've got to get this started. A lot of times this happens if the district has not opened their plan, but the principals have been working away and got everything done. We are going to get this screen until that district plan is opened. So superintendents or principals, be sure to tell your superintendents if they're getting that message, don't just forward the message to the principal and say, hey, you need to do this because you've probably already done your job. We need the superintendent or their designee to open that district plan, okay? So those of you that are coordinators in your district, it's large enough that you have a coordinator, a lot of times you're able to take care of this for your schools. This is really kind of more of an issue with our smaller schools that we have a principal and a superintendent that are wearing so many hats that they just don't realize that there's two parts to this plan. Coming back to our agenda, remember that there is also a tutorial for completing our plan. This is not due until August 30th, but August 30th does creep up on us very, very quickly. So we tried to open this up early this year so that those of you that are early birds and wanted to get started could. And we always appreciate that because that allows us time to read those over the summer because we do read every single plan. And we are not able to allocate any money for RSA until every plan is approved by somebody like the 4 people on this call. Those are the ones that are usually reading those plans as well. So every single plan has to be approved. Brenda, I think last year that was what, about 935 plans that we read because it's for every single site. So if you have any questions about those plans, please don't hesitate to give us a call, but I would recommend that you watch the video tutorial first because a lot of times what I find is your questions usually are answered on that, and we're trying to be able to help you get those questions as quickly as possible. And it's probably a faster way to get your questions answered. Do be aware if you have not opened it yet, when the first time it is opened, especially at the district level, there are 3 questions that are asked. This is to determine if your site is exempt from needing to complete the plan. It is very rare that we have schools exempt from completing the plan. It's usually about 12 to 14 schools each year that are able to claim that exempt status. And usually we start off with about 3 dozen that claim it. And we're calling them back and saying, not quite, we still have to do that. What usually catches us is that there is a question that says, have 100% of your students scored or met RSA criteria? This does not mean did you promote 100% of your students. It means did all of your 3rd grade students take the OSTP and did every single one of them meet RSA criteria on the OSTP? So if you had students that had to be promoted with an exemption or were promoted through the screener or promoted through a student reading proficiency team on probation, you'll have to answer no to that question. That includes students, if you had students taking the OAP, because that would be exemption 2. Again, you'd have to answer no to that question. So with this, because we do not yet have our OSTP scores back, they are coming quickly, but they're not back yet. If you're wanting to get started with this, you can either just go ahead and answer no to that question, because we know that especially this year, that's always it's usually just our very, very small schools that would be able to say 100% of their students have met, but you guys know your history and know your likelihood of being able to accurately answer that is yes. Or you can wait until those scores are returned and then answer no if you need to, if anybody did not meet criteria. I'm sure that was extremely convoluted. Brenda, any questions?
We do have one question.
Sure.
Going back to the end of your report,
Yes.
on the instructions for the end of your report, it says that entered as students who moved into a site and are below benchmark, not those who dropped mid-year. Would you please clarify which is correct?
Okay, let me go back to this. Identified as below benchmark who moved to the school site. Oh, that's entered. Identified and, okay, so this would be exited, right? We're talking about exited, Brenda, yes?
So maybe Deanna, you want to unmute and ask her, but I think she's
No,
students-
I'm talking about entered, because
Okay.
you said that you can add students who dropped mid-year, but this says moved into the site.
Okay, so I probably misspoke, so let me clarify that. Thank you for checking.
This says the number of students who moved to the school site after the beginning of year report was submitted. That's not, those students who dropped mid-year are already at your site.
Okay, so that's where I said that I probably misspoke. The entered would be those students who are who have moved into your school, or there's also times where we have a student that is showing up. Here's why. Those directions, when we wrote those directions, we did not require a mid-year report or mid-year screening. And there are times where we have students that show up on that mid-year screening that did not show up on the beginning of year. So that's why you're seeing some discrepancy there. So again, thank you for making that note, and that's something we'll need to get OMES to change for next year. I can't have them change things when the report's already opened. So I apologize for that confusion. But this would be, when you're looking at that entered column, that first one, it'd be students who enter your site and that are now showing up below benchmark, or students who are already here that were okay at the beginning of year, but are now showing below benchmark. Jan, does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, okay. So, and then the exited would be kids who move away from your school site after that beginning of year report was submitted, but only those that were below benchmark. Because again, the other kids that were not below benchmark, they weren't included on that beginning of year number to begin with.
So Melissa, just to clarify, just
Yes,
Deanna
ma'am.
saying, we do, because I've already completed part of my report. I just did the kids that have moved in. So I need to go back and change that to anybody that dropped below during the year as well.
If you needed to add them to a plan mid-year, that's where you would
Okay,
include those kids, yes.
okay.
All right.
Okay, you had one question about what you were just talking about on the district reading plan. Can
Mhm.
you address the TSI and CSI exempt status question, or question number 3, before we can access our plan?
Sure. So if you are under the Office of School Support, it's usually that bottom 5% of our schools have been identified as CSI, or Comprehensive School Improvement, where you're working with one of the school support personnel for some supports there. Or if you are on that ATSI, you're working with Michelle Seibolt and her team, receiving again school supports there, because you were in that bottom 5% in a targeted area, such as like special ed, or demographics such as African American students that are not where they need to be, or in that bottom 5%. So you're receiving those targeted supports. If you are working with the Office of School Support under that designation, you would answer no to that third question, that you are not exempt from that, okay? And if you're not quite sure, I do have a list. The Office of the CSI, the Comprehensive School Improvement sites, are on our State Department website. You have had to submit like a budget and a plan, things like that, working with Dr. Brooke Myler and her team. And then I have a list from Michelle Seibold on our ATSI designation schools. There's 315 schools from elementary to high school. It's a much smaller number of just elementary. So if you're not sure if that's you or not, you can give me a call. It's not something I'm obviously going to read out for everybody, because that's your district's information that we wouldn't share on a public call. But most of our schools are likely going to be saying, yes, you're exempt. You know, if you are working with Dr. Brooke Myler or Michelle Seibold for that CSI or ATSI designation. Okay. Any other questions?
Do we have a place on the reading plan for 4th and 5th?
There is not. No, it is dealing with K through 3. What is your plan there? Okay, any other
So
questions?
far, that's it.
Okay, just got to give a little wait time there. So, okay, just a quick reminder about the state test and RSA, that if you were wanting those RSA scores back early, that you needed to have that third grade ELA testing done by May 3rd. And that for those of you that were able to meet that deadline, you should have those preliminary scores back by May 24th. So we'll be looking for those and being able to move forward from there. So that's just a few days away. And then also, I just wanted, this is a repeat from last month, but it bears that reminding of that flow chart from our decision making. I'm going to just close your eyes if this makes you seasick. Okay, again, but we have that flow chart down here. When we talk about students being promoted or retained, I'm still getting a lot of questions saying if they don't pass the state test, they have to be retained, right? And everybody say the answer together. It's 2 letters. No, there's a lot of different pathways. So that first pathway is for students who meet RSA criteria on the OSTP. Please remember that the words proficient, advanced, basic, below basic do not have anything to do with the RSA criteria. The RSA criteria is a separate score that the 3rd grade students receive along with that comprehensive score. So it's either they meet RSA criteria or they do not meet RSA criteria. Those students that meet RSA criteria are eligible for automatic promotion, and you don't need to do anything else with them. You don't need to fill out any paperwork or anything like that. You don't have to have a meeting. You don't need to send a letter home. They're just moving forward like kids of any other grade, okay? For students who do not meet RSA criteria, the next thing you would want to consider is how did they do on their screening assessment that was approved by the State Board of Education. This can be any of those 7 screening assessments. So I do know that in the past, we have had a student that says, well, our screening assessment that we use is Acadians, but this student came from another school where they used STAR and he met that score at the other school before he came to us. Does that count? Absolutely it counts, because STAR is also an approved screening assessment. It also does not have to be during the benchmark windows. So Misty might have a student that is taking the STAR assessment, and because they're getting intervention, decided to give it to them in October, which is outside of the beginning, middle, or end of year screening windows. And that student was able to score a 392, which is the end of year 3rd grade target for the STAR assessment in October. So that student is eligible for promotion to 4th grade based off of that score. Now, does that mean that that student doesn't need any intervention? Maybe, maybe not. That's something for that team to decide and look at. Hopefully not, if they're scoring that well, that they were able to meet the end of year goal. But sometimes we do know that we have those little surprise jumps in our score, but everything else is looking pretty like we still need to give some service to that kiddo. So that's up to you guys as a district, how you would want to take the student off of those interventions. The question has come up this year in regards to students that were taking assessments virtually. What happens if that student scored that grade level target for the end of year for 3rd grade and they were taking the assessment virtually? Does that count? Yes, it does. Does it count if we think that that's an unusually high score? And that was one that we've had a previous discussion about, that we had to go down to our legal department to get some advice about. And what they have stated, just that reminder, is if the student, if a school personnel witnessed that the student was receiving support that they should not have been receiving for that assessment, then yes, you can have made those scores invalid and say we needed to reassess the student that would not be eligible for promotion. But unless it was directly observed from school personnel, we would need to assume that that was a valid score and that they can be promoted based off of that score. Okay, so again, we have some language from legal. It's down a little further in this running agenda, but it is down here in this agenda in case you need to refer back to that. So again, if they don't meet on the screening assessment, they did not meet RSA criteria on the state test, then we would go to our 7 good cause exemptions to determine if they needed to be promoted or not. A couple of reminders on our exemptions. One is there's often a lot of confusion between exemption 2 and exemption 5 because both deal with special education. Exemption 2 is for students who take the Oklahoma Alternative Assessment Program, or the OAP. This is usually for our students in severe and profound classrooms that are eligible for promotion under exemption 2. Exemption 5 are for students who are on an IEP and the IEP team has determined that they have made acceptable progress on their IEP goals. This used to say that they were had to be retained a year previously. That was removed. Okay, that previous year retention is no longer a requirement for exemption 5. So the difference between exemption 2 and exemption 5 is exemption 2 is students who take the OAP. Exemption 5 is for students who take the OSTP, but both are on an IEP. Okay. The other change to keep in mind, this went into effect last year, but again, it's a fairly newer change, is exemption 6. Exemption 6 states that for students who are not on an IEP, who have been previously retained 1 year. It used to say 2 years previous retention. It is now 1 year previous retention. And please remember that students who participated in a transition grade, like a T1 class from kindergarten to 1st, that year is counted as a retention year for this purpose. Or if students were retained in pre-K for academic reasons, that would have been counted as a retention year. And then finally, for students who did not meet RSA criteria, they're not meeting that grade level target that we're looking for on the screener, they don't meet the requirements for any of the exemptions, at that point, a student reading proficiency team can determine if what is best for that student, whether it's to be retained in 3rd grade or to be promoted into 4th grade with probation. To do that promotion, it requires a unanimous decision from every member of the team, which would be a family member, a 3rd grade teacher that worked with that student for reading, the 4th grade teacher, a 4th grade teacher that was responsible for reading instruction, and a reading specialist if one is available on your staff. If you do not have one available on your staff, then you have just the other 3 members of that team. If everyone decides unanimously to promote that student, then that student is promoted with probation, which that means the student needs to continue to receive interventions the next year, be on a reading plan for the entirety of the year. And then that team would also review that student's progress at the end of the year to determine if that student would move on to 5th grade. The student comes off of probation if they are meeting the grade level target for the corresponding grade level on the state approved screening assessment. It doesn't have anything to do with the OSTP at that point. It's down back to that screening assessment. So I'm going to use Misty again because she's right below me on my Brady Bunch screen. If Misty has a student in 3rd grade that is promoted with probation on the student reading proficiency team, and that student meets a grade level target for 4th grade, let's say during the middle of the year benchmark, they're meeting that middle of year benchmark target for 4th grade on their screening assessment, that student is off of probation and they don't need to do anything else with that student. If that student never does get to that grade level target for 4th grade, then that student needs to be considered still probationary and determine what are we going to do for 5th grade? Do we retain in 4th or we do move on to 5th grade? Same idea. And then after 5th grade, we transition to a locally developed plan. It's no longer under RSA where we report that to the state. It's a locally developed plan of how are we going to best meet the needs of that student. Okay. Whew, long convoluted explanation. I apologize for that. But coming back to our current agenda, remember
Okay,
that
Melissa, we have lots of questions you want to
Okay,
answer.
let me finish this. Remember that we do have this reporting form that's on our website where we have a fillable PDF that they can identify how the student was being promoted or if they were being retained. All right, Brenda, take me one at a time.
Okay, so which pathways require a parent meeting?
Just pathway 4.
Okay, do we need to keep any record of meetings for 4 or 5 student meetings?
I would, let's see, get me to a screen over here. Under our RSA coordinator page, and I can add this to our agenda so you'll find it a little faster. You'll see ongoing documentation for 4th and 5th grade. This would be a documentation that you can use for those 4th and 5th grade students of what are we doing with them and what we decide to do and just kind of what needs to be there. Okay, so again, I will add that to our agenda after our meeting today so it's a little easier to find and it'll just be a link you can click.
Is it okay to promote a student using good cause exemption 5, which is the IEP, if the student didn't take the OSTP reading test?
If the student does not take the OSTP, yes, it is fine to give them, use any of the exemptions on that. So how you would determine that is if they were meant to take the OSTP on their IEP, that's just kind of that determination between OAP or OSTP. But if they were supposed to take it, they did not take it for whatever reason, then yes, they can still qualify for exemption 5.
Okay, if I have a 4th grader who was below benchmark end of year 3rd, at benchmark beginning of year 4th, then below again at end of year 4th, we do place them on a reading plan again, right?
Okay, can you give that to me one more time?
If you have a 4th grader below benchmark end of year in 3rd grade, then at benchmark beginning of year in 4th, but below again at end of year 4th, do you place them on a reading plan?
So you probably would not want to place students on a reading plan based off of just their end of year scores. So if they were where they needed to be at the beginning, and I'm assuming they did not flag at the middle of year for some reason, so they have not indicated that there's any reading difficulty throughout the entire year because they were fine at the beginning and you've not had any concerns throughout. If they're just now showing up as end of year, as below benchmark at end of year, you might want to make a note of, hey, next year's teacher probably better look at that, but they don't need to be on there. Now, we're talking about a 4th grade student. I'm assuming, are we talking about a probationary promotion student?
Yeah, so I don't know, Gina, if you want to unmute, but it
Yeah,
just said,
Gina.
yeah.
Yes, it was probationary student.
Okay, and so if they were at benchmark at the beginning of year, correct?
Yes, yes. And below at mid, I didn't write that because
Okay.
she was below at mid also.
But at the beginning of the year, they met where they needed that benchmark of where they needed to be.
For beginning of the year, not for the end of the year benchmark.
But if they've met
Mhm.
that beginning of year, they've met that grade level target for where they are in that time, then she's off
Yes.
probation. So you don't need to
Okay.
write any plans for that child.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
You're
Yes.
welcome. That's a confusing one.
Glad you unmuted to tell us. Yeah. Is there a standalone PDF of your flow chart? They would like to share it.
You know what? I can make one. I'm making a note.
The notes you have. Okay. Just wanting clarif.
Yeah.
Oh,
go
sorry.
ahead. Yeah, I do. I actually have it. I just need to send it. Who's needing it that I can send it to you right away?
It's me, Allison. I requested it.
All right.
I know.
That's okay,
I'm
Allison.
pretty high maintenance.
That's all right. We like you anyway.
Thank you.
Okay, just wanting clarification. Students who were on target in an approved screener at any time during the school year are eligible for promotion. For example, John did not meet requirements on OSTP, met benchmark at middle of year test, but not end of year. John is eligible for promotion under pathway 2, correct?
Okay, so let me come back to this real quick. And this is where this can get really confusing. Let me pull up, I'm just going to pull up STAR. Remember, we have this technical guidance that has showing us where at the beginning, middle, and end of year our students should be. These are our grade level targets. 392 is in great big red letters. This is what we're calling our magic number. So if John scores a 392 at any time during first, second, or third grade, he's eligible for promotion. But he might have scored at the beginning of year a 320, let's say a 324, which means that he was not on a reading plan because he met that grade level target for where he is. He's not considered at risk, but he's not at the end of year expectation. So he's fine. He's where we want him to be. He's doing okay. We wouldn't put him on a plan. And we would hope that he would, with instruction, continue to progress. But he's not eligible for that automatic promotion until he gets to that 392. Okay. Does that make sense? And let's see, who was it that asking that question so that we can make sure that we're looking at the screener that you're using?
It's A. Bennett. I don't know her first name.
A. Bennett. If you want to unmute real quick, tell me what screener you're using. They may be having a hard time getting to that, but just
So basically she wanted to know if they met students who were on target at any time, basically.
no, they have to meet, it has to be the end of year third grade score that they meet to be able to qualify for that second pathway for promotion. But they can meet that at any time, just has to meet once and at any time during first, second, or third grade. So like, again, for FAST, they have to score a 503 at some point, okay? All right. What else?
You may have already answered this, but I'll make sure. If a student meets the requirements for exemption 5, but parents opted out of OSTP, what is our pathway for promotion?
You can still use exemption 5. You can, the exemptions don't require participation in the state test. The reason that that particular exemption says the OSTP is to distinguish it from exemption 2. I was trying to go back to my flow chart there. But there is nothing, this just says that they did not meet the RSA requirement or RSA criteria, whether it was because they took the test and did not score that, or because they did not participate in the test. Either one, they can still use that exemption, any of the exemptions.
Okay, someone has a question about the language from legal regarding validity of scores. Is it in the agenda? And could you show them where?
It is on the agenda. This is a really extensive document and I don't have my fingers on it. I tell you what, if you want to shoot me an email, I will find it for you. For that person that's needing this specific wording, I'll find it for you and just show you exactly where that one is. I don't know that we want to make everyone seasick for me scrolling and searching right this second.
We have other people who would like the flow chart. Yeah.
I will get that PDF printed, attached on the website.
I'll write her email down, but M. Shelby at Medill, so I'll write it down.
Okay, Marilee, yes, that's a good idea. I gotcha.
I think someone just commented, I think the confusion we have on exemption 5 is the wording that states participated in the test.
Yeah, and that makes sense, and that's why that wording is there. Normally, we wouldn't have so many that have had that opt out, but that was just what we were dealing with this year. But we're not going to withhold that opportunity for students because of that reason.
Okay, it was Alicia Bennett who says they're using Dibbles. Her microphone's not working.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so let's come back over here and let me just. I'm going to show you two. There's Dibbles 8 because this has there's a confusion thing here. Okay, and Dibbles 8 is not working. Why not? There we go. So if you're using Dibbles 8, it's 442 that they need to have scored at any time during first, second, or third grade in order to be promoted under Pathway 2. If you're using Dibbles Next, which is now known as Acadians, so remember these are two different tests, but because of the division between the original company, they decided to make it nice and confusing for us. If you're using Acadians, it's a 330 or higher at that time that they can be promoted. So Acadians or Dibbles Next, which was formerly Dibbles Next, would be a 330. If you're using Dibbles 8 from Amplify, it would be 442. And that's that composite score that you're looking for. Okay, other questions, Brenda?
Is the only documentation we need to retain of the portfolios the completed signed checklist?
So if you will note over here, yes, we've put in here that you can see the whole point, and it specifically says in the statute that they did not want to require a lot of documentation on this. So it'll show that there's a checklist that needs to be used for the portfolio. Otherwise, you're making sure these things are in place. You're making sure that there is an OAP in place. That does not mean you need to go, or an IEP in place. You don't need to go copy the IEP. You just need to make sure that there's something in place that shows there's an IEP. If they are on an English language academic plan, just make sure it's in place. You don't need to go copy it. It's already there. It's already in their file. Just make sure that there's one in place. So this document should cover all of that, and making sure that your administrators are okay with that, they've signed off on it, agree with it, and are able to move forward. We purposely were trying to do this because we know that there's still some schools working on virtual issues, or parents that are not wanting to come in to sign things, so that we can do this with making sure that everyone is in agreement, and that the teacher, whoever is signing this document, says, yes, everyone has talked to us, everyone agrees with whatever it is that they're supposed to have. If the district is more comfortable having a signed document, they can sure attach that on there. But that would be a district decision to see if you needed that or not. Brenda?
Is it okay if we use two different screeners? For instance, a main screener NWEA and a secondary star?
You can. You might want to thinking about if that is really what you're wanting to do for best use of time and money, because those screeners are not cheap. And they do, although they're brief, they do take time to give. They give you the same information. I know the reports might look a little bit different, but they do give you similar information. Remember, a screener just says if a student's at risk or not at risk. Some of our screeners give a predictive diagnostic report, and it really is just a prediction. They predict that these students are going to be struggling with this or that skill. But yes, there's nothing preventing, you can give all 7 screeners if that's what you are inclined to do. That is up to you. But and it doesn't say that the student has to score on the one main screener that you report out on your reading plan. If you are using 2 screeners, if they meet that score on either one of them, they're eligible for that promotion. But I would recommend that you really do look at how that those time and funds are being used with multiple screeners, just because screeners are a great place to start, but they don't give you that down and dirty information that you really need for diagnosis of kids.
Okay, a request to show one more time where you would find the STAR scores for beginning, middle, and end of year.
Sure thing. So if you'll go to the RSA coordinator webpage, okay, you just go to the SDE website, sde.ok.gov, and you can just type in reading sufficiency, or you can put in RSA coordinator up here at the search. If you spell it right, that really helps. Okay, and you'll see up here at the very top, RSA coordinator or RSA teachers. Okay, if you will scroll down, you'll notice the first thing we have up here are the recordings of our past meetings. So if you haven't had a chance to join us previously, or you've missed some and you really just want to go to sleep to my soothing voice, you're welcome to turn this on and enjoy yourselves. You can also find the link to our running agendas up here as well. Sorry, it's Friday. It's the end of the year. We have to have a little humor. So, or at least my version of humor. You'll find screener, technical, and remote administration guidance right here. This is information that the vendors have provided for us. You can click on either one of these. There's STAR Early Learning, and STAR Early Learning, remember, encompasses both the early literacy assessment and the STAR reading assessment. And it's on the back page of this PDF. You'll see this colorful little chart that shows those grade level targets. So if I have a first grader in January and I'm giving them the STAR Early Literacy Assessment, and if they score a 681, I know that they are good to go. They are where I need them to be. If they are scoring below, let's say at a 550, and that's a 911 call, they are well below where their peers should be in the middle of year first grade, okay? So this kind of gives you an idea of where those targets are. This is set with the national norms. And again, this is what the companies have provided for us when I asked for them to give me these standard score alignments, okay? Again, set with national norms. So sometimes there's a discrepancy because you'll have your score set to state or local norms. So if you see that discrepancy, that might be why. Hey, Brenda, anything else?
Any update on approved dyslexia screeners?
Okay, great. We do have a team of teachers that have been working wonderfully hard this last month of going through screeners that have been submitted by vendors for consideration. We've had quite an extensive rubric and they've had to do a lot of digging. Some of our submissions have been over 600 pages long, which is a lot of stuff to read. We are currently in the process of going through the ratings from those teachers that have been looking through this. And actually it's been teachers, coordinators, principals, school psychologists. We have a special ed director. So a quite a variety of people on this team looking through this. We are currently working on that report, kind of checking against different ratings to make sure that things align, and making a recommendation to leadership to take to the board in June. So at the board meeting in June, there will be a report given to the state board and a recommendation of which screening assessments to approve based on meeting the requirements in statute. And at that point, we'll have that list. Michelle DeBerry in the Office of Special Education and I've been working on that report along with accompanying guidance that will be approved by the board, we hope. And then you'll have that for next year to kind of start making plans off of. Remember that we do not have to start screening for dyslexia until the year 22-23. So that'll give us next year to kind of look through things, make plans, get an idea of what's going on, go from there. Okay. Beyond that, that's really kind of where we are. But until that goes to the board, that's about as much as I can share. So.
Okay, I have a
Anything-
question. I'm gonna, oh, did someone?
Nope. Go ahead.
Okay, I have a question I'm gonna try to shorten, and I think hopefully it will not be as long as I think it might be, but, so we're looking at the end of year report, and they use iStation as a screener, and they give it monthly. So in determining if a student completed the program on level or not on level, do they have to strictly use May's score, or can they use an earlier score?
Well, I'm going to put a question back at this then. If that student was on level, let's say in February, because you're doing this monthly, how have they been doing since February? Is that student doing what they need to? I mean, are they still above, or did they go up in February, but then they have dropped back
Okay,
down?
so here's the rest of it.
Okay.
For example, we have 3 of our 3rd graders who scored below end of year benchmark in May.
Okay.
These 3 students scored 235, 242, and 240. However, in April, one student scored 246, another scored 244 in March, and another scored 244 in February.
Okay. So as far as determining if they have finished their plan, so there's a difference between being able to promote on screen on that pathway too, of just saying, okay, they're eligible for promotion. So that's just dealing with retention and promotion. When we're talking about finishing a plan, we're saying we are not worried about this student, that they are able to move forward, that they are going to be successful in 4th grade with their reading skills. So if we had a student, I'm going to use the one in February. If we had the student that met in February, that they've cleared that threshold, but that they've been going back downhill, first thing I ask is, what's their classwork showing? Is this student able to continue doing their classwork? Are they needing a lot of assistance? Are we still worried about them? If there's still concerns, then just having that one bump is probably not enough to say they've really completed their plan. They probably still need assistance. We can still push them on to 4th grade. That's fine. And what the school decides to do with that afterwards is a local decision. It's not dictated by RSA law. But it is our responsibility as educators to say, is this student able to move forward, or do we still need to provide additional supports? And that's what we're trying to measure with this end of year report, is how many of our students are really moving forward and able to do things and able to do what we're asking them as a 3rd grader at the end of the year, or a 4th grader next year, without having to pull them aside and say, okay, I'm going to read this to you because you can't read this text, or I'm going to have you sit next to this student and have them read to you. So thinking about that's what we're trying to measure here. So that student who met in 4th grade or in February and has been steadily going downhill, there may be still pause for concern there. That student who was up in April and met it in April, but has just had a sharp little decline because maybe it's May and that kiddo is done mentally. Again, I think you're going to have to look at the rest of your class, how that student's doing in the class, and make that decision as a team of, is this student ready to come off of supports and they're good to go and we feel confident that they're fine, or we need to keep them on a plan and we need to keep giving them some additional services in 4th grade. So I do see that we're at 2:58. So if I did not fully answer that question and we need to have an extended conversation about it, give me a call, please, and we'll talk. But I want to just double check on that. But yeah, that's a really nuanced question. And I wish it were more clear cut. If all I want to worry about is just the numbers, it's pretty easy. I can just say, well, if they met it, we're done. But what I'm more concerned about is that child learning, and are we where we need to be? Are we giving that child the support? And that's really our bigger concern. And that's where we really want to check on that. Okay, so just in the interest of time, let me point out a couple of things for you on our agenda. We've got a couple of live events. One of them is tonight. It's free. It's 7 o'clock. And if you have never heard Anita Archer speak, she is pretty fabulous. I know Deb Wade, who was on here, has been listening to her quite a bit, but I think she had a meeting at 3, so she might have already jumped off of here. But Anita Archer it's like watching my grandmother try to teach. She is so energetic that she's just completely fascinating. Her focus is really on explicit instruction and engagement. So if you ever want to try to figure out how to keep kids engaged, this is the person you always need to go to, is Anita Archer. But she's really going to talk about writing at the sentence level. So if you've been trying to work on with writing skills, this would be a really helpful presentation to watch. So it's free, and the Zoom link and the passcode is on here for you. And then there's a spring symposium coming in called All Hands on Deck from the Reading League on Thursday, May 20th, but this also includes recordings. So if you're in class that day, you're teaching that day, you can also watch the recordings for that same fee. This does have a fee with it. It's a $20 fee again for that, but there's some information there on that registration. And then finally, Pam Kastner is the lead of a group in Pennsylvania called PATTN, which is their Pennsylvania Technical Assistance Center. And she has done a wonderful job of curating a lot of resources in what she calls Wakelets. They're like Padlets, but it's a different program. And she's put one together on just family literacy. And with summer coming up, and I know that's something that a lot of people are looking for, some additional resources on family literacy, I thought this one might be a helpful to explore. And this is not just one resource, it's a lot of resources around family literacy. And it looks like my computer's thinking about it. Okay, so you'll see some different parent introductions to things, some webinars for evidence-based instruction, and how we can help get parents involved with just different literacy, some wonderful games to support early literacy that might be helpful to share with parents, some just different infographics or activities. So if you're looking for something to do to send home with parents over the summer, this might be a really helpful resource for you. So. All right, next meeting. So let me just take a quick poll for anyone, if you can just drop it in the chat. I am assuming that people are just kind of needing some time this summer to catch your breath and hopefully have some vacation. So I don't know that we're needing a monthly meeting in June and July. I could be very wrong on that, because I honestly was surprised that we had more than 25 people sign on today, and here we are going over time. So if you feel like we're good to wait until August to start meeting again, just that's great. We can go from there. If you feel like very strongly that we need to probably meet again in June, would you just drop in the chat, just put the word June, and that'll kind of give me an idea based off of our people that are here of if there's some things that you anticipate coming up that we might need to have another regular meeting. Otherwise, I think we'll just do it on if we need to, we can always announce one. But otherwise, as much as I love seeing you, I really hope that you go to the pool or the beach and read a book or sit on the couch and do something just to catch your breath and relax a little bit this summer. So, but we'll go from there. But otherwise, right now we're looking at probably August, unless we just have a lot of people that are saying, hey, we really want to talk to you. And I'm looking at the chat and I'm seeing most of you are fine with that. So that being said, I hope you do have some time just to take this summer and just relax. And but if you do need anything, we'll be here. Obviously, we're back up in the office finally. 15 months at home. I love my kids, but I'm done. So if you do need anything, please let us know. And we're slowly getting us caught back up. So thank you guys. And we'll stick around if anybody had a last minute question that we didn't get to.
So the extraordinary Jen McKay had one. Hold on a second. Let me go.
Oh, McKay.
Let me scroll. Is there anything we need to know about PD for our 21-22 RSA plan?
Other than to make sure that you have it. You need to have some kind of professional development for your teachers in the area of reading. It could be going over any updates to make sure that your staff is aware. If there's still a lot of confusion about who can we promote or how do we promote or how do we write effective plans, that would be a great PD opportunity that does not cost anything. If you are wanting to send like all of your teachers to a training or have somebody come in, that's a great opportunity if you have the funds for that. Maybe you send 1 or 2 teachers and they're coming back and sharing some information, but just some idea of what is it that you're planning for to help make sure that you're moving reading instruction moving forward with your staff.
Okay, the reason I ask is, am I on mute? What?
No, you're
never
not. I
know.
can hear you.
We're also doing dismissal right now, so you probably hear them calling car numbers. I just wondered if it had to be around the science of reading. I mean, that is what we're doing, but I just wanted to make sure, because I didn't know if there was something in legislation that had changed.
There is not for next year any legislation for that. Now there is some legislation that has recently passed starting for the 22-23 school year. But
Gotcha.
we'll address that as we get a little closer to it, because we're trying to get some things in the works for that.
I couldn't remember what year, and I was like, we start school. So, okay.
Jen,
Perfect.
give me some time.
I just knew that it was going to change, and I didn't know what year it was going to change.
You've got another year. You've got another year, so we're good. Phew. Yeah.
No, thank you.
You're
I mean,
welcome.
like, I need time right along with you. So,
Yes, I gotcha. I gotcha.
okay, thank you. I'm going back on mute. Bye, y'all.
Gotcha. Okay, anything else, Brenda?
I didn't see anything else.
All right.
Most people have said they love the meetings and love seeing you, but August would be okay.
You know what? That does not hurt my feelings. Completely get that. So, all right. Well, you guys have a great summer and we will talk to you soon, I'm sure. Bye.